check. He knew that was coming. It's heat check time.
Welcome to the Heat Check Podcast. I'm your host, John Gonzalez, joined once more after a couple of weeks off with other work concerns. He is back in the fold. Isaac Lee is here.
It's good to be back, Gonz.
Yes, we have many, many things to discuss. We're doing an emergency podcast here from LA after just learning that LeBron James has signed a 4-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's very exciting for the Lakers and less exciting for teams not named the Lakers that were hopeful to get LeBron. So we're going to get into a lot of that. But first, content on The Ringer. KOC has a piece on LeBron signing with the Lakers. You're going to want to read that. We also have a running blog from all the free agency madness over the weekend. That's courtesy of Haley O'Shaughnessy and Justin Verrier and Paolo and the whole team. So you're going to want to go and check that out on theringer.com. I also wrote a piece about Paul George re-upping with the Thunder on a 3-year deal with a player option in year 4. And of course, we've got NBA Desktop with Jason Concepcion and Bill Simmons. His podcast will be up. You're going to want to listen to that. And Bill's going to join us later in the program to talk about all of the LeBron ripple effects, how it affects teams in the East, what he wants to see happen. And then after that, Justin Verrier will join the program to talk about everything that isn't LeBron James related. But first, of course, the big news, LeBron James, and for that, we need a big guest.
Boom shakalaka! He's heating up! He's on fire!
All right, joining me on the other line for an emergency edition of the Heat Check podcast from Sources Say, from The Watch, from Ringer FC, it's Chris Ryan from his house on what I believe is the last landline in all of Los Angeles. Chris Ryan, when we called you, did it go directly back to 2002?
It's the LeBron bat phone. I've had it all these years just for this occasion.
Thank God you still have it. You really saved me. Chris, I was getting ready to do the podcast. I had a very leisurely podcast set up where we were going to discuss Paul George and Nas and parties and all this nonsense. Blown up. LeBron James signs a new deal. He's going to go to the Los Angeles Lakers, as we all anticipated. 4 years, $154 million with an opt-out clause after 3 years. We were expecting this, I suppose, but there were some rumblings earlier today that his people at least were going to take some meetings with the Sixers. Obviously, that was for nothing. This is what it was always going to be.
Yeah, so you say we expected this. I was a little bit surprised by the length of the contract, and I know that 3 years, it's the 3 years here. But LeBron has maintained maximum flexibility ever since he left Miami. And I think I was a little bit thrown off by the fact that this is exactly what people had sort of imagined for him. But then as the season sort of played itself out, I think we all thought, okay, LeBron's going to keep always having this absolute maximum flexibility. He's never going to get nailed down to one place. But maybe he saw what happened with Cleveland, which is that if you keep doing that, it makes it impossible to plan for the future. This deal is the final chapter, man. He wrote it. He is coming to Los Angeles. This is going to be where he plays the last years of his prime, supposedly. I mean, God knows with LeBron, he could be great until he's in his 40s. I'd love to see how he does that because I need the information.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what's jumping out at me is the commitment. You know, it's the commitment, and it's saying this is where the final act of my career is going to take place, for better or for worse.
He has 2 homes in Brentwood. We saw this coming. I think you're right that the length of the deal maybe was somewhat surprising, but for all of us who were hoping like, hey, maybe Houston will be in the mix, or maybe the Sixers will be in the mix, or who knows, like maybe he'll decide that he's going to stay in Cleveland. This is something that has been talked about in the NBA since, before last finals last year, not this past one, but a year ago, and everybody was whispering about it and talking about it. I guess the part that made me think maybe not is because Paul George decided to stay in OKC. We're still not sure what's happening with Kawhi. I thought like maybe that might give him a little bit of pause, but evidently not. I guess he thinks I'm either going to figure out a way to get Kawhi to the Lakers. And as we're talking right now, late on a Sunday night, Woj reported that as trade talks have unfolded, Kawhi Leonard's focus has changed. He now wants to be a Laker because he saw LeBron James sign with LA. But I thought like maybe LeBron would go, okay, well, I'm not sure that the pieces are in place yet, so perhaps I'll have to think about it, but clearly not.
Well, and this is the thing. So you're talking about pieces in place. We also have to think about the pieces that aren't on the board, because it's not like Kawhi found out about this from Woj.
Right.
We have to think about what are the orchestrations happening behind the scenes. What is Kawhi? What kind of contact might there be right now in terms of, I'm not saying, God forbid I ever accuse the Lakers of tampering, but you have to wonder about what is the 3-point plan for success here. Is it really just LeBron and the kids? Because that would go counter to what LeBron has typically done in his career. He's usually surrounded himself with veterans and at least one sidekick that can call himself an all-star. That would be Kawhi. We thought it might be Paul George. Obviously, something happened where Paul George just really fell in love with the summer hype house and decided to stay in OKC. I think that's the thing that I'm really most curious about. We knew that LeBron was probably going to go to Los Angeles. What we don't know is what the Lakers are going to look like next season.
Yeah, I'm looking at their roster right now. Obviously, they've got to figure out what they're doing with Julius Randle, who's on the market now. In a deal, though, that let's just say that they are obviously interested in Kawhi Leonard, because if you pair LeBron and Kawhi, automatically you have an amazing defense and now you're off and running. But how do you get Kawhi, right? And I think like in any deal without Brandon Ingram in that deal, if I'm the Spurs, I'm hanging up on them. I mean, it would have to at least start there. And then beyond that, what do you do about Lonzo? Like, because I know part of me thinks, Lonzo, his defense came along. He's not a guy who is like super hold on to the ball. He's sort of hot potato with the ball as a passer. So that's a positive thing. He keeps the ball moving. His shooting is suspect though. So I wonder if he has to be moved out as well.
Well, for one thing, here's the thing I've been thinking about the Lonzo thing is we don't really consider the fact that LeBron is not only like an incredible basketball player and an incredible basketball mind, but also something of a protector of the legacy of the NBA. And I wouldn't be surprised, the more I thought about it, it wouldn't surprise me if he was like, I'm actually going to fix this Lonzo thing. Like, I'm going to bring this kid under my wing. This kid has a lot of the same skills that I had when I was coming into this league. This sort of positionless, incredible vision, has a lot of raw tools, but has to put them together. And I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron, if he's making this commitment to the Lakers, it wouldn't shock me if he was like, Lonzo can stay and we can figure all this out.
Can LeVar stay in that scenario? Or
well, that's the thing. Is like, I don't know if you can predict it. I don't know if you can turn down the volume on it. And it depends on, if I'm LeBron, I'm just like, the same thing for Luke Walton. I'm just like, you can't control LeVar, so don't try and let things take care of themselves. Lonzo's more or less an adult. Like, he has to make his own decisions about the relationship he has to his family. I just don't think that LeBron arriving in Los Angeles is an automatic Lonzo's ticket is punched out of town.
Is it an automatic?
Brandon Ingram, on the other hand, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think there's so much we don't know right now, because I don't think that this is LeBron James going, well, I couldn't get PG and I may or may not be able to get Kawhi, so I'm just going to go and this is going to be a lifestyle choice for me. I want to be in LA because I've got these other outside basketball business concerns with Uninterrupted and, entertainment. And, there's all these rumors about Space Jam 2 and all this stuff. I don't think it's that. I think he still sees, especially if he's going to go to the West, I think he still thinks, okay, these are the end of my prime years. I'm going to take one more run at it. And he's always thinking ahead. I mean, when he went to Cleveland, there were went back to Cleveland rather, there were still shoes to drop, right? I mean, they had to trade Wiggins and they ended up picking up Love and, putting this team together on the fly. And I'd be shocked if he hadn't thought this through and had contingency plans, or several actually, for Paul George going, yeah, I'm good. And even if they couldn't get Kawhi, I'm sure he's got contingency plans. There must be something in place here in his head where he goes, yeah, this team's probably not good enough as is, even with me. So this is what we need to do to maneuver.
So that was one of the interesting things that I was thinking about. I was revisiting, because it's just the incredibly anticlimactic way this was announced, with an unverified Twitter account belonging to Clutch making this announcement, and then everybody reports the details immediately. And you remember back with that Lee Jenkins piece, part of what LeBron was saying was not only coming back to Cleveland somewhat to right the wrongs of the decision, but also to build a winning culture there. And I think that he did that. They went to the finals. They went to the finals multiple times during his time in Cleveland, and they won one. But I don't know necessarily that he ever created or helped create an infrastructure for success going forward. And I think that would be actually the thing that would be most impressive for him coming to Los Angeles, outside of whether Space Jam happens or what deals Spring Hill managed to make with like HBO while they're here or whatever. I'm just saying, I have no idea what the show business stuff that they would do is. But that would be the major thing, is if he came here, made them immediately relevant, made them an immediate title contender, and fostered the next generation of Los Angeles Lakers stars to learn how to play title-winning basketball. That's kind of, to me, the team-building LeBron is the one that I'm kind of most curious to see. I don't know if that's what we're going to get, though.
I would, if that's the scenario, then I'd love for them to figure out a way to keep Brandon Ingram. I mean, maybe the way they keep Brandon Ingram is that they don't come to some sort of accord with the Spurs in order to get Kawhi. Because again, I can't imagine a world where they somehow pry Kawhi away from the Spurs without also including Brandon Ingram in the deal. But I would love to see what Brandon Ingram looks like with LeBron, because last year, especially when Lonzo was out, he looked great. I mean, like, he was running a lot of point in that scenario, and he had a ton of agency, and Luke Walton was empowering him. And all of a sudden, like, we were starting to see Brandon Ingram's game progress. And I think, like, obviously with LeBron on your team, that's going to help you. I mean, that's like, it's going to be fantastic to play alongside a guy like that, to see his work ethic, to see how he prepares. And then also he's going to take a lot of heat off you on the court. And I would love to see what he looks like next to LeBron.
Here's also what I want to see. How patient can Rob and Magic and LeBron be? Because right now, you can go into next season with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and KCP and whatever other pieces you have, Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma, and you can probably, is that a 50-win team? I don't know. I think it's close, right? And now everybody would say, yeah, but you need another all-star. That would require getting rid of that young core. Depending on how you feel about that young core, it doesn't really matter, but that would require that now. Not next season, though. Well, because next season, Kawhi is a free agent. And next season, Kevin Durant is a free agent. And next season, DeAndre Jordan is a free agent. And next season, you never know what can happen. And that's the thing that I will be most curious to see about over the next few weeks is, do the Lakers keep their powder dry, or do they immediately try to build superstar central at Staples? This
is very interesting. I mean, it has some like James Dolan-y Knicks with Carmelo whiffs where they, they could have just waited and instead they got panicky and decided no. Now, the flip side is, and I think like everything you just said makes a lot of sense. It's very intriguing, right? Where the Lakers go, okay, we're the Lakers. Like we just got LeBron. It's going to be a destination. We don't need to offload some of these young guys. What we're going to do is wait. And next year, we're guaranteed to get one of those big name free agents that you just rattled off to come and play with LeBron, because not only is it LeBron, but now it's LeBron in LA with the Lakers. This is easy. This is a layup for us. And we don't have to give up anything massive either. And I'm looking at their pick allotment right now. They don't have any extra picks coming in except for a 2019 second round pick from Chicago. And they've got a 2019 going out to Sacramento. So they're basically even on that front. So if they were going to go and get a Kawhi now, they'd have to forfeit something and handicap themselves for the future. And we know that with previous LeBron teams, he's been fine with that. But if they do just wait, now all of a sudden that could really be something. I mean,
yeah, they get into the Anthony Davis sweepstakes.
Yeah.
They could get into the Kyrie Irving sweepstakes. Dude, I mean, maybe setting your sights on Kawhi right now, I don't know, maybe that's exactly what the Spurs want them to do. I have no idea. I have no inside information about that. But like when you think about it, it's like the Spurs just saying we letting it out a little bit, like we don't want to trade him in the Western Conference. We don't want to trade him to the Lakers. And that would be devastating for them to trade their franchise player to the Lakers, essentially setting up a new dynasty in Los Angeles as the last act of Pop and Buford. I think that would be pretty surprising. But how patient can the Lakers be? Because if you wait, a lot of these, I just think that this is the new normal. All these big stars are always going to be making themselves available, whether through free agency or pre-agency. So you can get these guys. It's just about whether or not you have the pieces to get them, and who actually do you need or want.
Yeah, and how patient can you be is a big thing. But then, so let me play devil's advocate, though. So the flip side is, a year ago, the Lakers were saying this about Paul George, right? Where they were like, well, just wait. Sam Presti went and traded Sabonis and Oladipo and picked up Paul George, and everybody figured it was going to be a 1-year rental. And Paul George came through LA and talked about the fans chanting for him and how much he loved it. And he's from the area. And everybody just thought it was a foregone conclusion that this was going to be a team up with LeBron. And all of a sudden he decides, I'm going to go to that house party in Oklahoma City with Nas, and he stays there. So if they really want Kawhi, isn't it possible that all of a sudden Kawhi gets traded somewhere else and decides, nope, I'm not coming? I mean, yes, there are a bunch of other names that you rattled off, but that would be the one I think that would be the biggest boom.
Kawhi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Kawhi automatically makes them the Death Star. I think Kawhi and LeBron is the first two pieces in the ingredients for the Warriors killing stew. I just don't know if those two alone are enough, and I don't know what else you can scrap together if you trade essentially the team for Kawhi Leonard.
So there's our friend KOC, before the whole news broke about LeBron, put together, the Lakers were running out a little bit of options and floated the idea of potentially signing Boogie coming off an Achilles to, say, a 2-year max. Boogie, obviously, previously, LeBron had said is the best big man in the game. Now, circumstances have changed. Big men coming off of injuries, not good generally. Would you take him?
And they just re-signed KCP, so
right.
I don't really know if they have enough money to even entice Boogie. Because Boogie's probably looking at someone trying to give him a fat but short deal, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably
because they don't
right.
want to be overcommitted if they're dealing with a guy who's never going to be the same after his Achilles injury. But I don't know if the Lakers actually have enough money to get Boogie now.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they figure out a way. Like if they decide not to offload some of these young guys and go pick up Kawhi now, what they do to put some, pad out the team around LeBron for this year while they're waiting potentially for next year. But it's still a critical offseason. I mean, they landed, obviously, clearly, the biggest name in free agency. They're the Lakers. They're back. This is amazing for them. But they're not all the way there yet, right? They still have a lot of other moves to go, but it's the biggest win for them, and it's fantastic. I wonder though, Chris, what do you think, legacy wise for LeBron, joining the Lakers? What does that set him up for in terms of how we think about him? Are we is this because this is the final main push for him? Are we going to in the end start thinking about him as a Laker? Does it depend on whether he wins a championship? The Lakers have such a big marquee. I wonder if now all of a sudden everything else is blotted out.
I think he's post-team. I think for as much as we think of Michael Jordan as the iconic player of that era, I still associate him with Bulls colors.
Yeah.
And you still think about him with Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen and everybody else. I think that you're going to look at LeBron as the paradigm shift to post-team NBA. Guys who are taking their entities, whether you want to call it a brand or their organizations or even just their services and talents, and they're using it at the maximum leverage point to get what they want out of the game, whether that's titles, whether that's a better standard of living in different parts of the country. And the old ways of thinking about teams of we drafted this guy and we just made a 10-year run with Iverson and it went the way it went, that's over. That's a wrap now. And that's how I think LeBron will be. Remember, no matter what happens with Los Angeles.
Yeah, player
no matter
movement.
if Los Angeles is a 3 seed that gets beaten in the conference semis next season. I don't think we'll ever worry about whether LeBron was a Laker, a Cav, or a Heat player.
What do you think
and if he wins titles with all three, that might be in and of itself one of the great accomplishments in pro sports.
Yeah, that's totally true. What do you think because there was this sort of obstinate Laker fan strain, and there was some of it in Philly too, while people were we don't want LeBron, it's a homegrown thing, and let's just keep going with the process and building with our own guys. There were some Laker fans who didn't want LeBron because, it's always been Kobe's team. Before that, it was Magic's team. And, those guys were traditional Lakers. What do you think they're thinking, the Kobe stands right now? How do you think they feel about this?
That'll be pretty interesting. The Kobe stands are probably going to be keying off of Kobe. And that will depend on whether or not LeBron and Kobe work well together. I don't really know a lot about their relationship, but they're both Nike guys. They're both very driven individuals. I don't think that Kobe was gonna. At a certain point, they were going to have to come to grips with the Kobe legacy and kind of be like, for this team to succeed, it can't just be like, you guys are never going to be as good as Kobe. And the Lakers have a long history of amazing players before and after, maybe not after Kobe, but at least before him. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. I think LA is a star town, and they're really hungry for that team to matter.
It's going to. I mean, it's going to be an absolute. It's always a circus because it's the Lakers, and people always show out and turn up for those games.
I'm kind of into it this year because this feels like this is taking me back to like when ESPN launched the Heat Index, and the entire basketball world like turned to look at one place. When he went back to Cleveland, it felt like this feels right. This is heartwarming. It's Kyrie. They'll probably be pretty good. And they had the drama, and it was David Blatt, and fit in and fit out. And obviously Kyrie left. Like they had the drama, but it didn't have. This is new. This feels like uncharted territory, and I'm kind of excited. It's a great time to be writing and thinking about basketball and talking about basketball because it gives us something new to talk about. We were a little bit frustrated with that. We kind of put all of our eggs in the Houston Rocket basket, and it's cool to talk about the unicorns, and it's cool to talk about like whether or not Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton will get to 35 wins next year. But it's more interesting to talk about LeBron James on the friggin' Lakers.
And as an addendum to that, we definitely are not headed for Warriors Cavaliers 5. So congratulations to everybody who likes basketball. We're finally out from under that. So obviously the Lakers are the big winners here because they signed LeBron. Who's the loser? Who's the big loser because they didn't get LeBron?
Well, first of all, I think Cleveland is immediately in the the 10 seed, right? Depending on what they wind up keeping, who knows? But they could just try to strip everything for parts. I'd be curious to see whether or not Kevin Love becomes a trade piece now. So Cleveland, obviously, from multiple finals trips in a row to maybe out of the playoffs, probably out of the playoffs. Another loser, I think, would have to be Philadelphia. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they got jerked at all, but I think just in the long tail of the last couple of months of this franchise and star hunting and trading, McHale for Zaire to get a little bit of money and to get all this stuff that happened, get the 2021 pick to become a player in this. You had to feel like that was to be a player in this offseason. And the Kawhi chapter is not closed yet, but Philly not getting LeBron, even if it was a really long shot, you still feel bad about that. I'm trying to think of who else would be a loser here because the Lakers, because the NBA is a winner here because the Lakers are relevant, and that's just going to make more people interested in the league.
Yeah,
I think Houston has to be considered a little bit of a loser.
Yeah. I mean,
they seem now they're kind of like, we're going to go again with the guys we had last year and hope Chris Paul stays healthy through the playoffs.
And -1 because they lost Ariza. And I know that he's older now, and I'm sure that Morey's got a bunch of guys that, he thinks he can plug in there and be fine. But like down in Ariza for his defense and also 3-point shooting on a team that jacks a ton of threes, like that sucks for them. That's like one fewer guy that they can go and battle the Warriors with. But I agree with you that I think obviously Cleveland, that's the end of their run. It was fun. You got the championship. The 52-year drought ended. Good for Cleveland. The Sixers, on the one hand, I go, okay, well, they wanted to put themselves in position to take meetings with LeBron. They took a meeting with his reps, but they do still have Simmons and Embiid, so they are still in good shape. However, like you see the power dynamics shift so rapidly, and they didn't get Paul George and they didn't get LeBron, and now it's like, do they go and overpay for Kawhi? Do they have to go and overpay for Kawhi? Yeah.
I don't know. Ramona just tweeted that the Lakers had felt a sense of urgency this week to find a co-star for LeBron, either PG or Kawhi. However, when Magic spoke to James late Saturday, he assured them this was a long-term plan, that his decision wouldn't be affected by a transaction they could make under a time pressure. That suggests maybe he's comfortable going through a season without a certified all-star at his side.
That would be good by me because then maybe that gets Kawhi to the Sixers. I would really like to see Kawhi to the Sixers. Although then there's the caveat of what kind of assurances are you going to get, if any, by going and trading for him? Or do you have to do sort of a Sam Presti, Tribe Called Quest, scared money don't make none gamble, where you're going and picking them up and just hoping for the best. And in order to do that, you're probably going to have to get rid of some combination of Fultz and Sarge and Covington and that 2021 unprotected. And even then, I'm not sure if it gets done.
Yeah, outside of what the Lakers do, I'm always curious to see what the next move is, because these are relatively competitive people. You know, I mean, Sam Presti, quoting Tribe Called Quest aside, he actually did push his chips in and sacrifice the long-term financial flexibility of the Oklahoma City Thunder for friggin' Carmelo Anthony, because he thought that would give him a shot in the Western Conference playoffs to go along with Paul George, and it was a bad move. So I think that you're going to see around the league a bunch of competitive people being like, I'm not going to get owned by Rob Pelinka. I'm going to go after it. You know what I mean? And whatever that means, whether that means putting Godfather offers on the table for Kawhi Leonard, whether it means starting the Anthony Davis sweepstakes now, or doing whatever it is. I mean, for a Boston, you can say, hey, we like our guys. We like this team with Gordon and Kyrie coming back. We'll see you in the finals, maybe. They're obviously the odds-on favorite to go to the finals from the East. But I don't know about other teams. What's Masai going to do? What's Neil Olshey going to do? What's Brett Brown and the Frankenstein Sixers front office going to do? What's Pat Riley going to do? Are they all just going to sit out and wait until Kevin Durant's up next year? Or is there something else brewing that we don't even know about?
It's going to be fascinating to watch. It's both exciting and a little bit of a bummer, because it's exciting because, as you said, LeBron to the Lakers are relevant again. It's great for the league. It's great for all of us who love basketball. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens in terms of their team building. Do they wait? Do they try to go aggressively after somebody to pair with LeBron right now? And then what are the ripple effects there? But a little bitter because it would have been nice. Philadelphia would have been nice. There was a very obviously small percentage chance, but I was holding out hope. But you're the LeBron of the Ringer, so we have you at least.
I am entering my twilight, that's for sure.
You're jumping off of cliffs in Anguilla. It's fantastic. Chris Ryan on your landline. Thank you for doing this. You'll be on group chat this week, Ringer FC, all that stuff.
Yeah, and then we're going to Vegas. So we'll see you guys in the desert. There will be nothing to talk about out there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. All right, that's Chris Ryan. Be sure to check him out later on in the week on a bunch of other podcasts. But now, to bring in the boss man, Bill Simmons.
Boom shakalaka! He's heating up. He's on fire.
All right, joining me on the other line, got a text message from him immediately saying that he needed to chat about everything that had happened with LeBron James. So we bring him in. He runs the joint. It's Bill Simmons.
It's just us down the East, Gons. That's it. Everybody else is gone. And then there was two.
How do you feel about this?
So, first of all, I feel like LeBron got out of the East just in time. It was like this was the year to get out. He got through one last time, beat the Celtics in Boston in 7. It would not have happened next year with the team he had. And he might not have even got by Philly. Kind of thrown to be assumed by one of the two teams. But I really wanted to beat him one time on the Cavs. The Celtics I think they had lost the last 4 against the Cavs, and then he just kind of took off. So I feel a bit cheated, but anyone who could read the tea leaves on this stuff knew that the Lakers were incredibly likely for a year. So I can't say I was shocked.
You and KOC were talking about it at not this past finals, but a year ago, the finals.
Yeah. It was we were in Cleveland. I think it was before Game 3. Maybe it was somewhere around there, but yeah, it was last year. We've been talking about it for a year. And, there were little breadcrumbs that were being sprinkled. And when I had Marcelo on my podcast in February, we kind of laid through all the signs that, stuff like when they threw the life raft to Contavious Caldwell-Pope for $18 million for 1 year. He's a clutch client.
Yeah.
There was 7 of those. And at some point, you have to look at it and go, are we going to feel like idiots if LeBron goes to the Lakers? But, even at the 11th hour, all this stuff, he met with Philly. That felt like a window dressing meeting to save face for Philly and all that stuff. But there was still a small part of me that was like, what if he just looks at this and goes, what am I doing? I'm going to go to the Lakers. We don't have a chance really to win. And what if I get hurt in 2 years and I want to play in the finals again? Maybe I'll just go to the best team and just change his mind last minute. But it was apparent that he was locked in from the get-go because he just committed without anybody else going with him. So obviously this is something that they've wanted to do for a while.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things that could happen. Maybe they go and move some of the young guys out and bring in a Kawhi or somebody else, or maybe they do wait and LeBron is cool with that. I'm sure he's already thought about it. But this is something that I was just thinking about. Are you ready? Because I'm not sure that I am. Are you ready for a finals without LeBron in it?
Or will we get it again? I mean, if they get Kawhi, if they can figure out how to get him, if they can spin Lonzo into another asset, or if Lonzo develops, it's not inconceivable that they could make it next year. Get a couple buyout guys. My headspace has been more just trying to wrap my head around now that it's actually happening. LeBron as a Laker, and just what that's going to look like and feel like, and how the fans are going to respond to him and all that stuff. Because the Lakers have had it both ways. They've had the guys stay there the whole career and retire. They've had guys come in midway through their primes. They've had guys come before their primes. They've had guys come at the tail end of their primes, like Will Chamberlain. This is just not somebody that feels like he belongs to them. And the Celtics had a little bit of this with KD and Ray in that first 2007-2008 season. Now, those guys hadn't won anything yet, but it didn't really feel like our team until 2009, 2010, after we had a chance to root for them for a couple of years. The first year was like we'd put together some fantasy team. It didn't feel like it was the real team. They're wearing the uniforms, but we hadn't built up any real attachment to those guys other than peers. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a different experience to have this hired gun come into your team and basically be the best guy on it. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, I'll be interested to see how they respond, because they're used to watching these guys kind of either grow up or, a little more rhyme or reason to it.
I wonder how much that actually matters to and I'm doing like air quotes here, Lakers fans, because, they tend to be, there's a Lakers fan group, but then there's, across the country, people who identify as Lakers fans, even though they don't really have some sort of geographical attachment to it or some familial attachment to it. They just sort of pick the Lakers because they're Lakers. Like with you and the Celtics in Boston, it's a bunch of fucking maniacs in Boston who love all their Boston teams. And similarly with Philly. So I wonder if they just don't go, this is great. It's LeBron. Of course we got him. It's fucking LA and it's the Lakers and we deserve this.
I think that's how it's going to play out. I think that's what we're going to have. And especially if you can bring Kawhi with them and they're an instant contender and stuff like that, I think the general feeling is going to be, this is great. Awesome. You have somebody, I don't know how many more great years he has. I actually thought, I thought the number was already too high heading into this year. And then he had, the playoff performance he had, I thought was probably the best he's ever had. But, it could be 2 years, could be 3, whatever. It's still this guy who is now, I think, the second best player of all time. And they went from 5 straight years of just being nothing to having this guy. I'm interested. Kobe's been very diplomatic so far, but that's going to be a fun storyline too. The thing is, there's so many fun storylines with this. It's fun to have him in the West. It's fun to have him in LA. It's going to be fun to see what kind of team they build. Kobe's reactions will be fun. Magic, God only knows what kind of more tampering he's been capable of. I think he's already broken some tampering checkpoints already. But, the Paul George thing, I'd rather have Kawhi. And I think if you have LeBron and Kawhi, it's pretty easy to figure out the rest of the team after that. You're always going to have people that are going to want to play there.
I agree with that. I think when I said to you, are you ready to have a finals without LeBron? That was, if they don't get Kawhi, right? If it's just this team, I don't think LeBron plus the team that's already in place with, whatever spare parts they might be able to cobble together is enough to get past the Warriors. Now, if they go out and get Kawhi, all bets are off. That's an amazing team. And now you've got a conversation that should be had. But you did text me on my way in as I was, hurtling down the 10 to get to work to do this emergency podcast. You texted me and said, this means the Sixers have to overpay for Kawhi. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think that whatever they were going to throw at it, they were going to throw at it anyway. Why do you think they need to overpay now?
Because they have cap space. Because I thought they were the most talented team in the East last year. They weren't ready. They weren't ready to. They needed the reps. They didn't have them yet. But if they can get 8 to 9 months out of Embiid again, Simmons is going to take another jump up. and then you add Kawhi to all the other pieces they have. I still am a false believer. I think they're going to get something out of him next year. And then you have the East wide open. Why not overpay for Kawhi? Like, why not pay 120 cents on the dollar if you feel like, you can kind of snag him away from the Lakers? I think the Lakers, Ingram obviously is a prize. They have unprotected first-round picks, but LeBron's in their team, so I don't really know what that's worth. And then Kuzma, he played well for 2 months. Not like he really finished the second half of the year that strongly. And then Lonzo is just the most polarizing trade value guy in the league. I've heard so many varying things with him. I just think the Sixers could put together a better package. And then on top of it, perfect team for him. I think it's a better fit. I think putting him with Embiid and Simmons and some of the other pieces they have, that's a scary team. I actually hope that doesn't happen. But, if they come up empty, and we've already had a lot of free agents ink up already, and they have all this cap space, I don't know. I don't think treading water is great for the Sixers. I'm a big believer in when you have two of the best 15, 16, 17 guys in the league, no matter what their ages are, there at least has to be a tiny bit of urgency. They have a chance to make the finals. I don't know why they wouldn't want to, move heaven and earth to try to get Kawhi. You don't agree with me on this?
No. I think the idea of I'm 1000% behind what Brett was saying about they need more. Right? Because I look at the Celtics and I go, the Sixers don't have enough to get past the Celtics, especially when you guys are going to add Kyrie and Gordon to your team for nothing. I mean, they're already behind. And then on top of that, you're adding 2 All-Stars. So yes, they do absolutely need more. And I think you're right about Brandon Ingram. If the Lakers wanted to throw Brandon Ingram at the equation and trying to pry Kawhi away from the Spurs, is better than any single player that the Sixers could offer. However, you're right that the Sixers have a lot more assets and can put together a better package. I wonder how much it would take. In the when you're saying overpaying, are we talking an overpay to me would probably be Fultz plus Dario plus Robert Covington plus the Sixers' own pick plus the 2021 unprotected. Maybe you could get by with one of those picks or take one of those players out of the equation. But if you're going to call an overpay all of that, that's a lot. You'd have to have some assurances. Would you do it without any assurances?
The question is, do you think Fultz can be an important guy and a contender next year? They know way better than we do, right? I saw this morning that he wasn't going to be at Summer League.
He's not playing in Summer League.
That's insane. I honestly, I think that's insane. I think that's a terrible idea not to have him at Summer League. He should absolutely be there, and he should be getting reps and getting his confidence up. He should be the centerpiece of a trade if they're going to get Kawhi. If they don't feel even comfortable enough studying the Summer League, then maybe they know something we don't. But my feeling is Covington has to be in it. Then it's Covington, Sarge, Zaire Smith, the Miami pick, and then maybe Philly's pick in 2021, or even 5 after. And is that enough? Or does San Antonio say, what happens if they say, we also want Fultz? Then that probably tips it too much, obviously. But they're competing against a Laker team that they could do Ingram. I think Kuzma, I'm not sold on his play, but as much as anyone else. I actually think Lonzo, they could spin him through a third team and unprotected picks. I would rather have the unprotected picks from the Lakers, because one of these years LeBron is just not going to be LeBron anymore. And if you have their 2021 pick and he's not LeBron anymore, that actually might be a great pick. Philly, I think, is pretty much a sure thing to be competitive the next 5 years. Even if Embiid has some injury stuff, they still have Simmons, and he's still going to be one of the best 10 to 15 guys in the league. So, I would rather have the Lakers picks, but I think there's some urgency. It's too bad you don't have a GM, Gonzo.
It would be really nice to have a GM. I think it would probably help them. Part of me, I'm torn. I 1000% think they need more. I would love to see Kawhi as the more, but then I ask myself, at what cost? And Like, do you have to pull a Sam Presti situation where you're just going to bet on yourself and your organization and you're going to gamble on acquiring the player without any assurances? Or are you going to get some assurances?
So that's the key thing. Yeah. That's if they feel like there's not a guarantee he's going to stay, then I would scrap it. Because I felt the same way about the Celtics. Like, the Celtics and Sixers are set. They're going to be really good. And they have a future and they have more assets and picks coming. I wouldn't jeopardize that with somebody who might not stay. And I really think the Paul George thing was total fluke. And Presti was getting congratulated for it yesterday, and rightly so. It was really risky, but they did that to try to convince Westbrook to re-sign an extension, right? Or to sign an extension last summer.
Yeah.
The Paul George trade, and it worked. And then they were gambling that after a year in OKC, he might want to stay, and that worked. I still don't think that makes it the model. I think that's a pretty spooky situation. I think the next time that whole sequence of events happens, the guy just leaves and you're just looking at, you're like, oh my God, what just happened? We gave away 5 assets for a year of Kawhi. And, if you're desperate like OKC was last year, that makes sense. Philly and Boston don't have to be desperate, and LeBron just left the conference. So I just think the smart move would be to be somewhat measured with it. At the same time, like, I would overpay for what a guy is worth in the last year of his contract. I would not put Fultz in the deal unless he was the centerpiece of it with, maybe 2 other assets. And if that's not enough, then don't you agree? Like, at that point, it's just too risky.
Well, like I said, I think they definitely need more, but my hesitation is, when do you get the more? Because, and Chris brought this up at the top of the show when we talked to him, where he's like, look, you could just wait and roll that space over. You could bring JJ back on another fat 1-year deal and, roll that space over, and there's going to be a bunch of really good free agents hit the market again next year. And then you take a shot at it then, because you're right. Like, my one inclination is, yes, you definitely need more. On the other hand, you don't have to force it. And your comparison to the Celtics, I think, is very apt, because the Sixers have a lot of assets that they could throw at the Spurs to try to pry Kawhi away, but nobody has more than the Celtics. And you don't see them going, yeah, we're just going to unload those 4 first-round potentially picks in 2019 and throw them at the Spurs and go, just give us Kawhi and we'll figure it out, because they don't have to. Right now, it's it's their Eastern Conference. They are the heavy favorites to get out of it next year and for the next few years. So I think, like, you have to balance it between grabbing somebody and just being smart for the future.
I think it's easier for Philly to make the trade, though. Because the problem with the Celtics with Kawhi is they have these super expensive contracts or these tiny contracts.
Yeah.
And Philly can very easily put together anywhere from $16 million to $30 million to take either Kawhi by himself back or to take Patty Mills or whatever. Boston can't do that. Like, it's like their options are Gordon Hayward in the Kings pick, Kyrie in the Kings pick. Like, got to be thinking that way, or Jaylen Brown has to be in the trade with picks. And that's just too much for them. I think the problem for the Sixers is that Boston has a better team right now. So when I was talking before about the window for Philly and about how dangerous it is to just give away years, like, Boston, I would say, from a roster standpoint, is not a prohibitive favorite, but definitely if you had to bet your life on one of those 2 teams to make the finals, you bet on Boston. I think Philly has a chance to swing that. The problem is a lot of these guys signed already, and that's what I was talking about before with the urgency.
Yeah.
If they want to compete for a title this year, they have to turn that cap space / some of these assets into something, whether it's Kawhi or something else. I don't really know what else is out there.
Not a lot.
We have, it's like merry-go-round, and the merry-go-round stops, and you look around, and it's like, oh, all right, Kent Bazemore. That's that. Kent Bazemore has been swinging the Celtics-Sixers series.
No, he's not. So, neither is Mario Hezonja, now a new Nick. I mean, who are you going to get now?
That was sad on Twitter. Like, you read the LeBron to the Lakers, and then it's like, the Knicks have signed Mario Hezonja. It's like, the Knicks at least could look over at the Lakers, and they were kind of their partners in big market incompetence. Mm-hmm. And now the Lakers have pulled off this LeBron thing.
That always makes me feel better when I look up and I know the Sixers didn't get anybody, but at least they're not the Knicks.
Who is the third team in the East right now, in your opinion?
I mean, you'd have to say that it's still Toronto, right? I mean, Toronto still has, unless they start like moving pieces around the board. They said it. Masai said that everybody's available, and maybe they decide to detonate their team. But for me, it's probably them. I mean, like unless somehow the Wizards go and figure out a way to sign and trade for Boogie, I don't know. I mean, like I think it's probably still the Raptors. Who do you think?
Maybe Indiana.
Maybe the Bucks.
I don't. The Bucks, freaking Ilyasova. Man, that was rough.
Wait, so when I didn't bring this up, but when Marco and Ersan both left, Isaac was like, "That's a big bummer," and I'm like, "I don't know, that's fine."
Yeah, there's a reason they bounced around.
Exactly.
I think when they're February buyout guys, it's one thing. It really seems like Milwaukee chose Ilyasova over Jabari Parker was my interpretation of that, which I was surprised by. I was, just as an Eastern Conference fan, I was really worried Indiana was going to use that cap space to sign Marcus Smart from the South, but even scarier, Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon.
And they just went all in. They went all in right away on Doug McBuckets. And I was relieved. I'll put it that way. I guess you're right, though. I guess Toronto, by default, is kind of one of the top three teams in the East, and maybe not having LeBron in the East will be, good for them, and that's somebody that they could never get past. But that team just feels like damaged goods to me. That sweep was so brutal last year, and Lowry seems like he's going in the wrong direction. Lowry, by the way, is the possible Sixers.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That maybe Lowry would be a guy that they could upgrade at the point guard with if they're not sure what they're going to get out of Fultz. That'd be fine. I wonder how much you have to give to get him. But I just think if you're the Raptors and you're probably tired of the status quo. On the other hand, and I checked on this, can't get swept by LeBron if LeBron is not in your conference. So that's a positive.
Right. It's impossible.
Yeah,
because he's in the other conference.
You can't do it.
But if the Raptors, they have pretty bad luxury tax bill. If they just want to get off Lowry, and turn that team, a little bit, put the team. I like Van Vliet. Corral Bob was on my podcast Friday. I was just having an orgasm about Van Vliet. I wasn't against it because I really thought he was good last year. But if they decided, we'll take TJ McConnell back and we'll take Sarge back. And we'll take, some protected first and the Bayless expiring, and you can have Kyle Lowry. That would be pretty interesting. And I wonder, my point is, I think the Sixers will use that cap space because they're seeing the same thing we're seeing, that they have a chance to make the finals next year. You can't have Zaire Smith and Markelle Fultz and all these dudes are just not ready to be in an Eastern Conference Finals game when you're as close as they are. So they got to figure out what to do. And the good news is you don't have a GM.
Yeah, the as of yet unnamed GM is going to figure it all out. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe they do get Kawhi. As long as you guys don't get Kawhi, I'm happy about it. Who do you got on the podcast?
We're not getting Kawhi. We're not getting Kawhi. I stole Joe House from you for the Ringer NBA show or for the BS podcast. Joe House is coming on here tonight. I stole him. We're gonna go through all the free agency, and I just didn't like that everything happened within 18 hours. It was basically done.
All the good stuff is over. Although I am jealous because you did steal House, as is your right. But I'm jealous that you get to bust his balls about Austin Rivers. So please do that for me.
I am going to do that, but that doesn't mean that you can't bust his balls about Austin Rivers down the road. I'm most excited. The Laker fan friends I'm friends with, I'm most excited to send them text tonight about making up things I've heard about LeBron's health, just to get them freaked out as they're overjoyed and July 4th coming up and it's just feeling good vibes in here. And I'm just going to basically make up stuff in text that isn't sure to torture them.
I like it. I endorse it. Go do your mischief. Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
All right.
All right, that was Bill Simmons. Be sure to check out his podcast with poor Joe House, who's still a Wizards fan. That'll be up on Monday. And now that we've talked about everything under the sun, LeBron James-wise, we must discuss all of the other things not related to LeBron that happened in free agency. And for that, we go to the man, Justin Verrier.
Boom shakalaka! He's heating up. He's on fire.
All right, joining me in the studio, there's a lot of LeBron stuff that happened, and it overshadowed everything else. But to talk about everything else, we bring in one of the great editors at The Ringer here, Justin Verrier's in the studio.
Hello, John.
Thank you for doing this, buddy. You and I worked the first night of free agency when we thought the Paul George drama was going to be a lot.
Yeah, we thought that was going to go until, Monday or Tuesday at the latest? And then not only did he go, but pretty much everyone outside of LeBron signed that one night.
It wasn't even 24 hours before everything. It feels like almost everything is already over, but Paul George is a good spot to start. I wrote a piece about Paul George staying with Oklahoma City. You edited it. My take was, I guess if you're Oklahoma City, it makes sense. Of course, you want Paul George to stay. You went and traded Oladipo and Sabonis for him. You want to try to do better than you did last year and maybe another year together with Russell Westbrook. And if you keep Carmelo and you don't buy him out, you'll figure out a better fit. With LeBron now in the West, what's OKC, even with Paul George?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's basically you're warping yourself back to last year when you put this team together. There's still no clear answers as to if they're an elite team. And if anything, they're just more hamstrung with the fact that their cap is just non-existent. They had to bring back Jeremy Grant and going way into the tax.
And they were so excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think their big issues are to come. I think they need to figure out some guys on the fringes to really make this offense work. And more specifically, I think they need a healthy Andre Robertson. I think they assume that their defense was so good with him in there that they could just roll that back and that team will be enough to maybe get them to the Western Conference Finals, but that's a huge if.
They couldn't get past, and I know that they didn't have Robertson, and you did make this point to me last night while we were putting the piece together, that they were I believe, 10 in offensive rating, 10 in defensive rating last year, but they were significantly better, something like 5 with Robertson in the mix. I look at it and go, you still need more shooting. I mean, Paul George was your best and most prolific three-point shooter last year. And he hit 37% off the top of my head at 7 and change per game. After that, it was Carmelo. If those are the guys that you have on the perimeter jacking up threes, is that the best way to deploy them? Do you have enough? Clearly Russ is still going to go into Russ mode in games where it counts, in the very last game against the Jazz. He took 43 shots and Paul George took 16. I just wonder if they got their guy and they're happy about it, and then they're we're just going to go back to playing Thunder basketball.
Yeah, the two guys they signed make sense. They're the guys that they can grow with, or the guys that lift their ceiling up. But essentially, you need their two longest tenured NBA players and their two biggest superstars in name only to be different players. You need Russell Westbrook to get guys involved. You need Carmelo Anthony to not only take a bench role, but also play a little bit more differently, play more like Jeremy Grant. So it really is going to have to come internally. And so if you're going to be an optimist, you could say perhaps they can just alter the chemistry slightly, but that's a big if considering all that we know about these guys already.
Would you buy out Melo?
Yeah, no, I would try to keep him because if you're going to spend that money anyway, and I'm not paying the luxury tax payments, I think it makes the most sense to try to make it work within what they have, because otherwise you're just kind of turning to Patrick Patterson, and we really don't know who he is after an injury last year, I believe.
It's crazy that they're paying that much money for that team. Yeah. It's just bananas. And I know, and Thunder fans got very angry at me on Twitter about my take so soon. And I can't believe, we just got Paul George. We should be very excited. But my whole thing, again, is what are you actually getting for this price? Especially when it was only 6 years ago where you could have had, right now you're trying to keep together this core of Melo and PG and Russ and see where it takes you, right? Fine. Okay. But you had a better core 6 years ago and you didn't want to pay James Harden. And now all of a sudden you're willing to go deep into the tax and push $250 million on payroll for shoulder shrug. We hope we get to the conference finals.
Yeah. It's obviously weird, as many people have brought up, that they ended up with probably the worst of their MVPs from that era. But I guess it makes sense in that Paul George also made somewhat of a baffling decision to go back there, not only not sign a 1+1, to do this weird 3+1 that may work out in the long term, but he's giving the Thunder essentially all of his peak. So perhaps they go well together in that regard.
It's amazing. It really, as was. I will say, like, this, okay, look, I get why they did it, and I've already made the points on why I think I'm not sure that it's great. However, I am thrilled that by him resigning, we also got this weird party in Oklahoma City where Nas was there and Sam Presti was there, previously quoting A Tribe Called Quest, and they're smoking cigars, talking about they're just about winning championships. I'm there for all of that.
Yeah, I think we probably should have seen this coming, the Paul George decision, when we knew that Nas was flying in as well, and then Russ was just coming in from Hawaii in order to greet him. That doesn't happen if he's just going to drop the mic and walk off to LA right after.
That would have been really fantastic, although I feel bad for the SportsCenter person who has to produce the third part of the three-part PG off-season story. Not very dramatic, whatever comes out next. All right, so that's all the Paul George stuff. What else happened? The Rockets. Chris Paul signs a 4-year, $160 million max. He's 33 right now. He's going to be 37 in the final year of the deal. And they lost Trevor Ariza, which I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, okay, not that big a deal. I think it is. They're a team that shoot a lot of three-pointers, and they played really good defense last year. And Trevor Ariza does both of those things, but instead he took a 1-year, $15 million deal to sign with the Phoenix Suns. How do we feel about the Rockets now?
Split. I mean, obviously getting Chris Paul back is a boon for that franchise. Everything about their worldview is based around stars. I mean, Daryl Morey and Sam Hinkie worship at the same altar, and they're going to want those max players. They're the ones that make a difference. And we saw how much of a difference Chris Paul makes from that team. Obviously, he got hurt a lot. He got hurt in those 2 crucial games in the West Finals, but he brought them to a new level. I think franchise record 65 wins this year.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it felt like Trevor Ariza isn't their most important player, but he does kind of make everything work. He's that 3-4 that really unlocks their defense, allows PJ Tucker to play the 5. And while he's not really great offensively, he doesn't do a lot of things. What he does makes all those other guys better. And now you could say maybe Morey can just find another one of these guys in EuroLeague, or maybe there's like an underrated guy that we don't see yet. But right now, it does feel like they took a big blow and lost a bit of their margin of error against the Warriors.
Yeah, and I was hoping that's why I was kind of hopeful if I wanted everybody to go to the Sixers. The Sixers haven't gotten anybody yet. But I was hoping Trevor Ariza would land there. But if he didn't land there, I was hoping he would stay with Houston, because we did see Houston, when they were fully healthy, really push the Warriors. And there are people who don't think that Ariza is that great. I look at him and go, he's perfect for that team. He plays really good defense and he shoots 3-pointers. Well, like, what else are you looking for? I guess they weren't looking for, $15 million in the attendant luxury tax hit, but they keep Gerald Green.
But on that point, why couldn't they have just paid that?
I don't know. Good
point.
It
honestly just comes down to their new owner, not willing to pay the luxury tax payment, as you said. It seems a little bit of like penny pinching from a ownership situation and a team that we assumed was just going to go for this no matter what the price was.
Gerald Green, much cheaper, 1 year, $2.4 million.
There you go.
Not quite $15 million.
The young guy just pushing him out of his job.
Gerald Green out. KD, as we expected, commits to a 2-year, $61.5 million deal to return to Golden State. DeAndre Jordan looks like he's going to the Mavericks, verbally agreed to a 1-year deal, approaching the $24.1 million that he left on the table when he opted out with the Clippers, according to league sources. With Yahoo on that one. How do we feel about DJ to Dallas when, like, on the one hand, like he was always trying to get to Dallas. They had to barricade him in a house to get him to go back to LA. He's not the same player he was. I like DeAndre Jordan. He's going to offer some rim protection. He runs and, he'll rim run and they'll throw him some lobs and that's fine. But the two main guys there, Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka Doncic, are on decidedly different timelines than DJ.
Yeah, it seems like this is the closing of a story that happened in 2015. And in that regard, it makes a lot of sense, like narratively. But like you said, I'm not totally sold that DJ is the perfect player from this team. He's 30 years old, I believe, or going to be 30. He's making $24 million in a market that really, there weren't many other places where he could have gone. Not a lot of centers out there, not a lot of money. And the Mavs, yes, I think they'll have some success with him in there, but I think I'm more concerned about the opportunity cost that they gave up in order to give him that deal. Mm-hmm. If everyone is going to have money next year, and it looks like there are a lot of teams that are going to be going after two max guys and find that there are none, it seems like the Mavs having money this year was a huge advantage in this marketplace. And instead of getting maybe 2 or 3 guys on very good bargain deals, they gave it all to DJ for a 1-year run that ultimately won't make a difference because, like you said, their 2 best players are a backcourt that are like, what, 20 years old, if that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, if it's a 1 year, I wonder if like they'll try to extend him down the line or something like that. But yeah, that's a good point that maybe they just push off that money. Chris had mentioned earlier in the pod that, you know, with the Lakers and the Sixers being in a similar situation where they had a bunch of cap space, if things don't work out, that they could just roll it over to next year. But like you said, there's going to be a lot of teams next year who are looking around going, we have money.
Yeah. Who is out there next year? If Kawhi Leonard goes to a team that he likes, he's going to re-sign. Klay Thompson, maybe if that situation dissolves and KD wants to go out and follow his own destiny, whatever the hell KD is doing these days. But other than that, Jimmy Butler, you'd assume he'd get an extension. There aren't really obvious targets out there. And I think that we're going to get into a situation where there are more teams without a star to give it to than there are ones that are actually going to get one.
Some other house cleaning things that we have to run through here in the shadow of LeBron James. Aaron Gordon stays with the Magic 4 years for 84. Good move for the Magic. Aaron Gordon gets paid. They couldn't let him. I mean, like there was a lot of talk about maybe Indiana would take a run at him. It always felt to me like that it just made more sense for him to stay with the Magic, and the Magic couldn't let him go.
Sure. I mean, at this point, they have similar players in that front court in Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon. I personally love what they're building with a lot of long athletes with Bamba. Gordon, Isaac. I think it makes sense in today's...
They have no guards.
Well, here's the thing. The Magic are also like, when is their timeline right now? I think they're looking to be good in maybe like 5 years at best.
That's awesome.
As sad as it is to say, because they've been rebuilding for as long as the Sixers have. But I think worst case scenario, you just keep the asset. You could roll it somewhere else at the deadline or maybe going forward. I mean, Gordon is a really good player. I really like him. I want to see him in a really good situation. But for the Magic, I mean, it just makes too much sense to just pay now and maybe do something with it later.
We don't generally do breaking news on a podcast. I'm going to run something past you right now. Per Shams, this is hilarious. Lance Stephenson has agreed to a deal with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Whoa!
So we get LeBron and Lance on the same team in our backyard. I already go to a lot of Lakers games. I already go to a lot of Lakers practices. I'm going to way more.
It's incredible. I mean, I spent a few weeks with Lance Stephenson when he was a Pelican. He had a cup of coffee. He is everything you want him to be as a locker room presence. And by that, I mean, he'll just say things that might not make sense within the context of the discussion that's happening, but they're always entertaining.
I wonder, does LeBron even bother signing off on something like that? Because, like, you know, they've had those really super weird interactions in the past.
Sure.
Most notably when Lance Stephenson whispered sweet nothings into LeBron's ear in the playoffs, and LeBron just sort of shook it off. This is going to be a hell of a locker room next year, no matter who ends up in it.
I mean, listen, you just neutralize the threat. Lance Stephenson is the LeBron stopper. I mean, they might as well go out and get the Sean Stevenson at this point.
It's perfect. Okay, other things that happened in free agency since it started on Saturday night / early Sunday morning. Mario Hezonja, Danny Chau's favorite, to the Knicks.
Yes, love it.
It's perfect landing spot for him.
Sure. I mean, the Knicks, they're essentially going to punt next season. It seems like Kristaps will be back around New Year's at best.
Yeah.
So at this point, just take your flyers with whomever possible. There's a lot still in there in Mario Hezonja. He showed a lot toward the back end of that Magic season. They paid a pricey sum for him. I believe it was $6.5 million over 1 year.
Sure.
But like all of a sudden, this guy is just getting paid and doing it on a big stage. And that's my point I want to make here. This guy needs a stage, and there's no bigger stage than Madison Square Garden.
Congratulations to Jason Concepcion, who must be very excited about it. I will say, I was, before Hezonja came to the NBA, a massive Hezonja fan. I'm still holding out hope because there are certain players who need big stages. And Hezonja, when he was playing in Europe, when he was playing for Barca, has always been one of those guys who's like an attention seeker, put the spotlight on me. There was a famous quote where a reporter had asked him, "Hey, have you gone to see Messi play yet?" And he was like, "Yo, let Messi come see me." And I was like, what? I want this dude. So maybe he goes to New York and like becomes that, you know, outsized personality. That would be excellent.
I just want to see the moment where he runs up against Tim Hardaway Jr. and there becomes a Spider-Man point at each other meme going on, because there's going to be a lot of shots jostling going on throughout that entire season.
It's going to be fantastic. Also fantastic, Tibbs just cannot quit his old guys. Derrick Rose finalizing a 1-year deal to return to Minnesota, according to ESPN. Sure. Okay. Will Barton stayed in Denver 4 years for 54 for the Nuggets, according to Yahoo. He'll have a player option on that back end. That's a good move for the Nuggets. Nuggets, though, kind of locked into this team.
Yeah, I like the move. I like Will Barton. It seemed like he was going to get interest from a few places, maybe the Indiana Pacers. I just don't know why they're in such a rush to commit to this team right now. As we saw last year, they're not a surefire playoff team. Mm-hmm. And as things start to pile up here over the past couple hours, it seems like the West is going to be more deep than it is anything else. And so I do wonder if they're going to get to the end of the season and maybe they get the 8th seed or somewhere around there, and they'll start to wonder, why are we paying like $250 million for these guys that don't play defense?
They can have a powwow with the owners from OKC. They can all get together. There can be a summit. It'll be wonderful. What else happened? Devin Booker got pissed off because because the Suns cut his buddy Tyler Ulis without telling him.
Listen, I get it. Friendship is important. There's literally nothing that he could do about it. Like, he has another year on his deal before he hits restricted free agency. So the worst he could do is take the QO next summer and then play through that. And so, sorry, Devin, you kind of have to deal with it.
Bummer for him. One more for you. Rudy Gay, 1 year, $10 million, stays with San Antonio Spurs while they're trying to figure out what's going on with Kawhi.
Yeah, I get it. It's a good deal for Rudy Gay. I think he was more effective for that team than people realize. On the other hand, I don't know which way the Spurs are going, and some of their signings, this one and Marco Bellinelli, seem to indicate that they're going to still try to do the pop, like, let's go for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. This worked last year sort of thing with or without Kawhi. And I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm a little bit worried that they don't see the writing on the wall with this team.
Yeah, at some point, like, On the one hand, I look at the Spurs model and go, they're the Spurs. They're going to figure it out. Sure, they bring Marco back, and Marco will be in there. Rudy's back, and they'll just do their Spurs thing. On the other, I go, like, maybe they're sort of in denial about, like, we might have to hit the hard reset on this, especially because Kawhi doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get to the end of the summer and Kawhi will have signed the Supermax and this team will make more sense. Right now, they're very much in a state of flux.
Before I let you go, is this it? Is free agency over, or did we get through all the fun stuff?
Basically, it's pretty much Clint Capella and Boogie Cousins.
Yeah, that's right, Boogie. Okay, so you were in New Orleans for a long time. Mm-hmm. If you're the Pelicans, like, I always felt like it made more sense after what the Pelicans gave up to get him that he just re-signs there, especially because, you know, they're inclined to keep him for those reasons. But beyond that, like, if you're another team, are you willing to risk real money or years on Boogie, a big man coming off an Achilles injury? Like, what would you do if you're the Pelicans?
Yeah, and his options are slowly thinning out here. I think the Lakers, as Kevin O'Connor reported yesterday, were definitely interested, and I had heard similar things. But then they went out and paid Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, another Clutch Sports guy, $12 million for next year, which is going to significantly cut into their cap space. So outside of a sign-in trade, I think the Pelicans just won the LeBron James signing, or are among the winners of the LeBron James signing. It makes a lot of sense to bring him back if you're in New Orleans because they can't do anything else. They have a little bit of cap space if he doesn't come back, and you have Rajon Rondo, Darius Miller, guys you need to bring back from that team. Now, on the other hand, I do think there are some long-term issues that could arise from Boogie on a make-good deal. Not only is he recovering, but he tends to be a little bit of a sourpuss in the locker room. I don't know if you've heard this before. And I think that has an effect. And I wonder if him basically being on, let's say he signs a 1+1, which is a contract year followed by potentially another contract year, if he might start to have an effect on the team that they don't necessarily see coming. I think that's the worry.
So now we just wait on Boogie, and then it's Summer League, and then it's off to Vegas.
Right, we get to see Luka Doncic, and then all will be right.
Luka and all will be right. All right, you're very busy. You have many things to edit. And you'll be back this week for group chat and all that other good stuff. So be sure to check out Justin Verrier and everybody else. Justin, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that was Justin Verrier. I want to thank him. I want to thank Bill Simmons. I want to thank Chris Ryan. Great to have Isaac Lee back. The NBA show will be here all week. Schedule on that is TBD, so just be on the lookout on your podcast feed. We'll have the Bill Simmons podcast, of course. He'll be busting Joe House's balls because the poor guy is still a Wizards fan. And we're going to have a ton of content from Summer League, so you're going to want to check out all of that, as well as Ringer FC, which will be continuing every day while the World Cup is ongoing. NBA show will be be back. It'll be back next Monday. I, however, will not be back next Monday or for the next couple of Mondays because I'm going to jump on a flight with my lovely wife. We're going to go on vacation for a little while, but eventually I will return to the fold. But in my absence, there'll be other shows with other people and you'll enjoy those. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening to this particular podcast. Isaac and I are always super thankful and grateful that you do that, and we appreciate it. Bye.